They forced me to sit alone at the last table in the ballroom, as if I were a stranger at my own daughter's wedding. Meanwhile, my son-in-law's mother occupied my place at the main table, smiling as if she'd won a prize. I, Rose, after 68 years of living with dignity, never imagined I'd end up being humiliated like this on Caroline's been a most important day. My heart pounded as I held back tears. Then suddenly, an elegant man in an expensive black suit sat next to me and whispered in my ear, "Act as if you're with me." I didn't understand. I looked up at him and he gave me a knowing wink. When my daughter Caroline glanced over from the main table and saw who that man was, the color completely drained from her face. Sebastian is a name. My son-in-law went as pale as a ghost, and Vanessa, that arrogant woman who had stolen my place, began to visibly tremble. But to understand why that moment shook the entire wedding, I need to tell you how I got there. It all started 3 months earlier when Caroline officially introduced me to Sebastian. From the first moment, I knew something wasn't right. He looked at me with that fake smile people accustomed to manipulation use. He greeted me with a cold, calculated handshake, devoid of any warmth. But what truly chilled me was when he mentioned his mother, Vanessa this, Vanessa that. Vanessa thinks we should have the ceremony at the private country club where she's a member. Vanessa suggests the floral arrangements should be imported. Vanessa, Vanessa, Vanessa. My daughter nodded with every suggestion like a puppet. I tried to intervene just once during that dinner, only once. I suggested that perhaps they could consider the church where I had baptized Caroline, the place where she had her first communion, where we grew up together in faith. Sebastian looked at me as if I had said the most foolish thing in the world. Caroline looked down embarrassed, and then he uttered those words I'll never forget. "Rose, with all due respect, we are paying for this wedding. Vanessa has experience with high-level events. I think it's best to follow her judgment." I felt a stab in my chest. My own daughter said absolutely nothing in my defense. Nothing. The following weeks were a progressive nightmare. Every planning meeting was worse than the last. Vanessa always arrived with folders full of ideas, samples of expensive fabrics, photographs of ostentatious decorations. I arrived with my mother's love and my desire to participate in my only daughter's wedding, but it wasn't enough. It was never enough for them. If you're watching this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has reached. One day I went to Caroline's wedding dress fitting. I had saved for months to buy her a special gift, a pearl necklace that had belonged to my grandmother. I wanted to give it to her during that intimate mother-daughter moment. But when I arrived at the boutique, Vanessa was already there, sitting on the best armchair, a glass of champagne in her hand, giving orders to the employees as if she were the queen of the place. Caroline came out of the dressing room in a gorgeous ivory dress, and my eyes filled with tears. My baby looked so beautiful. But before I could say anything, Vanessa exclaimed in that shrill voice of hers, "Perfect! Honey, I knew this dress that I chose would look divine on you. You've made up your mind." I was speechless. Vanessa had chosen the dress. Vanessa was getting the credit. Vanessa was the star of the moment that should have been mine. Caroline glanced at me uncomfortably, but said nothing to correct her mother-in-law. I swallowed hard and took out the box with the pearl necklace. With a trembling voice, I said, "Caroline, my love, I want you to have this. It belonged to your great-grandmother. It passed to your grandmother, then to me, and now it's yours." I extended my hand with the little box. There was an awful silence. Vanessa got up from her seat and approached. She looked at the necklace with utter disdain and then let out a mocking laugh. "Oh, how sweet, Rose. But I think for a wedding of this caliber, we need something more sophisticated, don't you think? I already ordered a diamond set for Caroline. It cost $50,000. Those old pearls would look ridiculous with her dress." I felt the floor open beneath my feet. Caroline took the box from my hands listlessly and murmured, Thanks, Mom," so softly I could barely hear her. Then she put it in her purse without even opening the box, without looking at the necklace, without caring. I left that boutique with a shattered soul. I cried all the way home, but that was only the beginning of my humiliation. The next meeting was to discuss the seating arrangement. That's when I received the most brutal blow. We were at Sebastian's house, an enormous mansion that his family boasted about at every opportunity. Vanessa spread a floor plan of the event ballroom on the table. She began pointing with her finger covered in expensive rings. Main table, the bride and groom at the center, obviously. To the right, my husband, Thomason, and me. To the left, the maid of honor and best man. I expected her to mention my name at any moment. I expected to hear that the mother of the bride would have a special place, but Vanessa kept talking about uncles, cousins, important friends of Sebastian's. After 10 minutes, I finally asked with a trembling voice, "And me? Where will I be sitting?" The silence that followed was deafening. Sebastian exchanged a look with his mother. Vanessa smiled that poisonous smile I was starting to know too well. And then Caroline, my own daughter, the girl I carried in my womb, who I raised alone after her father abandoned us, the girl for whom I sacrificed everything, said in a barely audible voice, "Mom, the main table is only for Sebastian's immediate family and important people. You'll be at a table in the back with some other guests." Immediate family, important people. I didn't qualify for either of those categories. I was just a nuisance, a mistake, an inconvenience to be hidden at the back of the room. I felt like I was drowning. The words stuck in my throat. Vanessa added with false sweetness, "Don't worry, Rose, that table is nice too. Maybe you won't see as well from there, but, well, the important thing is that you're present." I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to shake my daughter and ask her what they had done to her, where the Caroline I knew was. But I just nodded, just swallowed my pride one more time. I just got up from that chair feeling like the smallest woman in the world. I left that house knowing that the wedding day would be torture, but I never imagined to what extent. Yes, the days leading up to the wedding were a silent hell. Caroline stopped answering my calls as often. When she did, her response were short, cold, distant. I tried to talk to her, to get my daughter back, but it was like talking to a stranger. One day I went to her dance department at this without warning. I needed to see her. I needed her to look me in the eye and explain why she was doing this to me. I rang the doorbell 3 times before she opened it. When she did, her expression wasn't one of joy. It was annoyance, irritation, as if my presence were an unwanted interruption in her perfect life. I asked if we could talk. She said she was in a hurry, that Vanessa was waiting for her to choose the centerpieces. Vanessa again. Always Vanessa. I begged for just 5 minutes. She sighed wearily, as if I were asking for an enormous sacrifice, and let me in. We sat in her elegant living room, filled with furniture Sebastian had bought. Everything there smelled of money, of status, of a life I could never give her. I tried to touch her hand, but she pulled it away. My eyes filled with tears as I said, "Caroline, my love, I feel like I'm losing you. I feel like I'm not your mother anymore. What did I do wrong? Why are you treating me like this?" She looked at me with those eyes that once looked at me with unconditional love, and what I saw there broke my heart. I saw discomfort, I saw shame, I saw a woman who wished I would disappear from her life. Her response was like a knife to the heart. "Ma, it's not personal, it's just that Vanessa understands this world better than you do. She knows how things are done in Sebastian's social circle. You come from a different place, you don't fit in, and I need you to understand that my life is different now. I can't be the daughter of a woman who cleans houses. Not at this level." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I worked cleaning houses for 20 years to give her an education, to buy her clothes, so she would never lack anything. I broke my back so she could go to college. I sacrificed everything, absolutely everything, so my daughter could have opportunities I never had. And now she was throwing it in my face as if it were my fault for being poor, as if I should be ashamed of having worked honestly to support her. Tears rolled down my cheeks uncontrollably. I told her in a broken voice, "I cleaned houses so you could have a career, so you would never go hungry like I did, to give you everything I didn't have. And this is how you thank me, by being ashamed of me?" Caroline stood up from the sofa, looked down at me with a coldness I had never known in her, and said the words that completely shattered me. "Nobody asked you to make those sacrifices, Mom. That was your decision. Now I'm making mine, and my decision is to build a life with Sebastian and his family, a life where you simply don't fit in. You'd better go. Vanessa can't wait any longer." She kicked me out of her house. My own daughter kicked me out as if I were trash. I walked down the stairs of the luxurious building where she lived, crying as I had never cried in my life. The people passing by looked at me with pity, but no pity compared to what I felt for myself at that moment. A week before the wedding, I received the official invitation in the mail. I opened it with trembling hands, hoping to find at least a personal note from Caroline, some affectionate words from my daughter. But there was nothing, just the printed invitation on expensive paper with gold lettering announcing the wedding of Caroline and Sebastian. At the bottom, in small print, it said, "Formal, elegant attire, punctuality requested." She hadn't even written my name by hand, not even that small gesture of humanity. I was just another name on her guest list, an uncomfortable obligation they couldn't avoid. I spent the money I had saved for emergencies on buying a champagne-colored dress. I wanted to look dignified. I wanted my daughter to be proud of me, even if only for a moment. I went to a salon and asked to have my hair done. The stylist did a beautiful job. For the first time in months, I felt presentable, but deep down I knew none of it would matter. I knew Vanessa would find a way to make me feel inferior. Anyway, the wedding day arrived like an inevitable storm. I dressed carefully. I put on makeup, trying to hide the dark circles under my eyes from so many sleepless nights. I put on the earrings my mother gave me decades ago. I looked in the mirror and tried to convince myself that everything would be okay, that maybe Caroline would react when she saw me, that maybe she would remember who loved her first and always. But it was a lie. Deep down, I knew that day would be my social funeral. I arrived at the event ballroom an hour before the ceremony. The place was spectacular. Giant floral arrangements, crystal chandeliers, silk tablecloths, pearl-colored chair covers. Everything screamed luxury. Everything screamed Vanessa's money. I looked for Caroline, but I couldn't find her. She was in some room getting ready, surely surrounded by Vanessa and her rich friends. I wasn't invited to that intimate moment. I wasn't welcome in my own daughter's dressing room on her wedding day. An event organizer approached me with a tablet in his hand. He asked my name. When I told him, he checked his list with a frown. Finally, he said, "Ah, yes, here it is, Rose, table 18, at the back of the ballroom near the emergency exit." Near the emergency exit, as if I were a nuisance they needed to evacuate quickly in case of trouble. He pointed the way with a disinterested gesture. I walked among the beautifully decorated tables, feeling that every step sank me deeper into the humiliation. The first tables were filled with cards bearing important names: Sebastian's uncles, Thomas's business partners, Vanessa's friends. All those people would have a perfect view of the ceremony. All those people mattered. Finally, I reached table 18. It was so far back that the altar was barely visible from there. The decoration was the same as the other tables, but the location said it all. I was invisible. I was expendable. I was the mother who was in the way. I sat in the chair feeling an enormous weight on my chest. Some guests began to arrive, elegant couples, well-dressed families, all laughing and greeting each other enthusiastically. No one approached my table. No one spoke to me. I was a ghost at my own daughter's wedding. Then I saw Vanessa make her grand entrance. She wore an emerald green dress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe combined. Diamonds on her neck, in her ears, on her wrists. She looked like a queen arriving at her coronation. She walked straight to the main table with that arrogant smile I hated so much. She sat in the seat of honor, the place that should have been mine, the mother's place. Several guests approached to greet her with reverence. She received every greeting as if it were her natural right, as if she were Caroline's true mother. I looked at Vanessa from my forgotten table and felt a rage that burned inside me. She was radiant, smiling, receiving congratulations, as if she had raised Caroline, as if she had spent sleepless nights when my daughter had a fever, as if she had worked double shifts to pay for tuition, as if she had sacrificed her youth, her dreams, her entire life for that girl. But no, that had been me. And now I was sitting at the back like an old piece of furniture no one knows where to put. The guests kept arriving. Sebastian's cousin walked near my table with her husband. I heard her murmur as she subtly pointed at me. "That's the bride's mother, poor woman. They put her all the way in the back. How embarrassing." Her husband replied softly, but audibly, "Well, look how she's dressed. You can tell she's not at this level." Sebastian did well to keep her away. Every word was a slap in the face. I closed my eyes, trying to hold back the tears. I wasn't going to cry. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction, but inside I was falling apart. A waiter approached my table to leave a glass of water. Not even wine champagne, like at the other tables, just plain water. I timidly asked if I could have a glass of wine. He looked at me uncomfortably and said, "Ma'am, alcoholic beverages are only for the main tables. Orders from the groom's family. Orders from Vanessa. I probably didn't even deserve a glass of wine at my own daughter's wedding." I tried to convince myself that none of it mattered, that the only important thing was to see Caroline happy. But how was I going to see her happy from this distance? How was I going to distinguish her face among so many people? The music began to play. It was time. The guests stood up. I also stood, craning my neck to try to see something. The ballroom doors opened, and Caroline appeared on the arm of Thomas, Sebastian's father. My heart stopped. She had chosen her father-in-law to walk her down the aisle, not an uncle of mine, not a family friend. Her father-in-law, a man she had known for less than a year, a man who meant nothing in her history. And I, her mother, the woman who gave her life, wasn't even considered to walk by her side. Caroline walked down the aisle in her gleaming ivory dress. She was beautiful, so beautiful it hurt to look at her. She passed near the main table and smiled at Vanessa affectionately. Vanessa returned the smile like a proud mother. I hoped Caroline would turn around, that she would look for me, that she would give me even a second of recognition, but she didn't. She kept walking as if I didn't exist, as if the 18 years we spent together, just her and I against the world, had never happened. The ceremony began. The officiant spoke about love, about family, about the bonds that unite people. Every word was a cruel irony. From my table, I could barely hear. The sound was distorted. Some people in front of me moved and completely blocked my view. I had to lean to one side in an uncomfortable position just to see a small piece of the altar. That's how I experienced the moment my daughter said, "I do." Hidden, uncomfortable, invisible. When the ceremony ended, the guests applauded enthusiastically. Caroline and Sebastian walked back down the aisle as husband and wife. Again, Caroline didn't look at me once. They headed straight toward the garden where they would take photographs. I remained seated at my table alone while everyone else stood up excitedly to congratulate the newlyweds. I didn't dare move. I didn't know if I was welcome at that moment. I didn't know if I was allowed to approach my own daughter. A distant aunt of Sebastian sat at my table. She was an elderly, elegant woman with perfectly styled white hair. She looked at me curiously and asked, "And who are you, dear?" I swallowed before answering. "I'm Rose, Caroline's mother." Her eyes widened in genuine surprise. "The mother? And what are you doing back here? Mother's always the go at the main table." I didn't know what to say. I shrugged, trying to hide my humiliation. She shook her head in disapproval and murmured, "What a lack of manners. In my day, this never would have happened." But it was happening, and it would continue to happen all night. The waiters began serving dinner. At the main table, there was lobster, imported cuts of meat, gourmet salads. At my table, they served simple chicken with white rice, not even the same menu. There was a hierarchy even in the food. They reminded me on the plate that I didn't matter. I tried to eat, but every bite got stuck in my throat. The elderly woman sitting with me didn't touch her plate either. She told me quietly, "This is a disgrace, dear, a true disgrace." After dinner came the family photo session. A photographer with a professional camera began organizing the groups. First, the newlyweds alone, then the newlyweds with Sebastian's family. Vanessa stood next to Caroline with a radiant smile. Thomas stood on the other side. Sebastian's siblings joined them. Cousins, uncles, even close friends of Vanessa's appeared in the photos. The photographer took dozens of pictures. Caroline posed happily, laughing, hugging Vanessa as if she were her real mother. I remained seated at my table in the back, waiting for my turn, hoping someone would call me, hoping to be included in at least one photograph with my daughter on her wedding day. But no one called me. The photos ended, the photographer packed up his camera, and I was never summoned. Not a single photograph, not a single visual memory of that day where I appeared with Caroline. It was as if they had erased my existence, as if my daughter didn't have a mother. I felt something inside me break definitively at that moment. It wasn't just humiliation, it was disappearance, it was extinction. I had ceased to exist for her. Vanessa walked near my table on her way to the restroom. Seeing me sitting there alone, with watery eyes, she couldn't resist the temptation to twist the knife deeper. She stopped next to my chair, leaned slightly, and said in a sugary but venomous voice, "Rose, dear, I hope you're comfortable back here. I know it's not the best spot, but you understand we needed to prioritize the important people, right? Don't worry, you can still see some of the party from here, although, well, not much." She smiled with cruel satisfaction. "And that champagne-colored dress you're wearing is nice. A little old-fashioned, perhaps, but nice. I spent $5,000 on mine, but everyone gives what they can, don't they?" She laughed that sharp laugh that drilled into my ears. I didn't answer. I didn't have the strength to respond. She continued on her way, strutting, leaving me there with my pain and my powerlessness. I looked toward the main table where Caroline was conversing animatedly with her new in-laws. She looked so happy, so fulfilled, so completely oblivious to the suffering she was causing me. Or maybe she wasn't oblivious. Maybe she simply didn't care. Maybe I truly had ceased to mean anything to her. That idea crushed me more than anything else. The party continued. There were toasts from Sebastian's friends. There were emotional speeches from Thomas talking about his son. There were words from Vanessa about how proud she was to welcome Caroline into her family. But there was no mention of me, no thank you, no acknowledgement, not even a simple phrase of courtesy. I was the ghost of the wedding, the guest who shouldn't have been there, the mother erased from the story. I was about to get up and leave. I couldn't bear it anymore. My dignity was completely destroyed. What was the point of continuing to suffer? I grabbed my purse with trembling hands, ready to escape this nightmare. But just at that moment, as I was about to stand up, a man appeared in front of my table, tall, imposing, dressed in a black suit so elegant it looked straight out of a fashion magazine. His watch gleamed discreetly on his wrist. Everything about him screamed power, money, authority. He looked me straight in the eye and said in a firm but kind voice, "May I?" I did not understand what was happening. I nodded, not knowing what else to do. He sat in the empty chair beside me with confident movements, as if he had every right in the world to be there. Then he leaned slightly toward me and whispered in my ear those words that were etched in my memory forever. "Act as if you're with me." His voice was warm but firm. It wasn't a question, it was an instruction, an order given with such certainty that my body obeyed before my mind could process what was happening. I looked up to see him better. He was about 50 with perfectly cut gray hair, an angular face, intelligent eyes that seemed to read people like open books. He gave me a knowing wink as if he were sharing an important secret with me, and then I saw it. I saw the exact moment Caroline turned from the main table and her eyes met this man's. Her face instantly changed. The color vanished from her cheeks. Her smile froze. Her eyes widened with a mixture of shock and sheer terror. Sebastian followed his wife's gaze, and when he saw the man sitting beside me, he also turned pale. He stood up from his chair so fast he almost knocked it over. Vanessa, who was distracted talking to a guest, noticed her son's reaction and turned around curiously. When she saw the man next to me, her expression of superiority transformed into pure panic. Her mouth opened slightly, her hands began to tremble, and for the first time all night, that arrogant woman looked completely undone. The man beside me didn't flinch. He picked up the glass of water in front of me and took a calm sip as if he were in his own home. Then he turned to me and said in a loud voice, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, "Mr. Allister, I'm so glad to finally meet you. I've heard so much about you." I was speechless. I didn't know who this man was. I didn't know why he was doing this, but there was something about his presence that made me feel protected. For the first time all night, I didn't feel alone. Sebastian was already walking quickly toward our table. His face was red. He was sweating. He looked desperate. Behind him came Vanessa, trying to maintain her composure, but failing miserably. Caroline had stayed in her seat, paralyzed, her hands gripping the edge of the table as if she needed to hold on not to fall. The man beside me noticed them approaching, but didn't seem worried. On the contrary, he smiled slightly, as if he were enjoying every second of the situation. Sebastian reached our table, panting. He tried to smile, but it came out as a horrible grimace. His voice was higher than normal when he said, "Mr. Allister, what a surprise to see you here. I didn't know you knew Rose." So that was his name, Allister. And by Sebastian's reaction, it was clear he wasn't just anyone. He was someone important, very important. Alistair looked at me warmly before responding. Of course I know Rose. How could I not know the mother of the bride? I came specifically to keep her company tonight. The silence that followed was so heavy you could have cut it with a knife. Vanessa had joined her son, and both exchanged looks of absolute panic. Sebastian stammered, We didn't know you were coming. We didn't receive confirmation of your attendance. Alistair looked at him with a serious, almost severe expression and replied in a cold voice, Do I need to confirm attendance to accompany the mother of the bride? How curious that you think I need permission to be here, Sebastian. The way he pronounced my son-in-law's name sounded almost like a threat. Vanessa tried to fix the situation with her usual false sweetness. Mr. Alistair, of course, you're welcome. It's just that, well, this table is a bit far away. Why don't you sit at the main table with us? It would be an honor to have you there. Alistair didn't even look at her when he replied, No, thank you. I'm perfectly comfortable here with Rose, although I must say I'm very surprised that the mother of the bride is seated at the last table in the ballroom. In all the events I've attended in my life, and believe me, there have been hundreds, I've never seen anything so inappropriate. The words dropped like bombs. Some people at the nearby tables turned with curiosity. Murmurs began. Vanessa tried to laugh nervously. Oh, well, Rose preferred this table. She asked for it herself, didn't you, Rose? All eyes turned to me, expecting me to confirm her lie. But before I could answer, Alistair spoke again. I don't think any mother in her right mind would prefer to sit alone in the back at her daughter's wedding, especially a mother who worked for 20 years cleaning houses to give that daughter everything she needed. A mother like that deserves the place of honor, not the corner of oblivion. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. How did he know all that about me? Who was this man, really? Sebastian was completely pale. Vanessa had lost all her composure. Her voice came out sharp and desperate. Mr. Alistair, I think there's a misunderstanding. We never meant to disrespect Rose. It's just that the main tables were reserved for immediate family. And Alistair interrupted her coldly. And the mother of the bride is not immediate family? Interesting concept of family you all have. The tension was so thick you could almost touch it. More people started paying attention to what was happening at my table. The murmurs grew. Alistair continued, now addressing Sebastian directly with a professional but threatening tone. You know, Sebastian, I've been considering partnering with your company for 3 years. Your father and you have tried to convince me to invest in your new real estate developments. We've had several meetings. You even presented me with very interesting projections and proposals. Sebastian nodded desperately, not knowing where all this was going. Alistair paused, took another calm sip of water, and then continued. But you see, I have a very simple rule in business. I never, ever partner with people who don't know how to value their own family. Because if a man treats his wife's mother like this, how do you think he's going to treat his partners, his employees, his clients? The blow was devastating. I saw Sebastian practically stagger. That partnership with Alistair was clearly huge for him, something he had been pursuing for years, and now he was losing it because of his own cruelty. Vanessa tried to intervene with a pleading voice. Mr. Alistair, please, this is just a family misunderstanding. It has nothing to do with business. Sebastian is a man of his word, an exemplary professional. What happened with the seating was just an organizational error. Alistair finally looked her directly in the eye, and what she saw there made her take a step back. It wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate decision to humiliate this woman. And I don't do business with people who humiliate their elders, especially mothers who sacrificed everything for their children. Sebastian was on the verge of collapse. His face had gone from red to white in seconds. He started to stammer desperate apologies. Mr. Alistair, please, let me explain. This is not what it looks like. I never meant to disrespect Rose. It's just that my mother thought it would be better to organize the tables this way, and I didn't pay enough attention. It was a terrible mistake, a mistake I'm going to correct immediately. He turned to me with pleading eyes. Rose, please come and sit at the main table. We'll fix this right now. But it was already too late. The damage was done, and everyone in the ballroom knew it. Alistair leaned back in his chair with a relaxed air and said, I don't think Rose wants to move from here. She's perfectly comfortable with me, aren't you, dear? He looked at me with those warm eyes, awaiting my response. For the first time all night, someone was asking me what I wanted. Someone was giving me a voice. Someone was defending me. Tears threatened to come out, but I held them back. I nodded slightly and said, in a trembling but firm voice, "Yes, I'm fine here." Vanessa let out a sound of frustration. Her mask of an elegant, controlled woman was completely crumbling. She attempted one last attack. "Rose, don't be ridiculous. Everyone knows this table is inappropriate for you. Come to the main table with us where you belong." But there was no sweetness in her voice anymore. There was desperation, there was panic, because she knew she had lost, that her little kingdom of cruelty was collapsing before her eyes. Alistair spoke before I could respond. "Vanessa, I don't think you understand the situation. Rose is staying here because I am here, and I am here because I find what you've done to her absolutely unacceptable. I've been watching all night. I saw how no one invited her to the family photographs. I saw how she was served a different menu than the main table. I saw how she was treated like a stranger instead of the woman who gave birth to the bride. And that tells me everything I need to know about this family." The murmurs intensified around us. People at the nearby tables no longer disguised their interest. They were listening to every word. Some women looked at me with compassion. Some men looked at Sebastian with contempt. The humiliation was changing sides. Now they were the ones being publicly exposed. Vanessa tried to control the disaster by lowering her voice and pleading, "Please, Mr. Alistair, this is my son's wedding. Don't ruin this special day with misunderstandings. We can talk about business later in private." Calmly, Alistair stood up from his chair. His imposing height made Sebastian and Vanessa look small next to him. He spoke in a clear voice that resonated throughout that sector of the ballroom. "There is nothing to misunderstand, and there is no business to talk about. I officially inform you that I withdraw my interest in any type of partnership with your company. I cannot trust people who lack the most basic values of respect and gratitude. I wish you good luck finding other investors. You'll need it." He turned to me and extended his hand. "Rose, will you accompany me to get some fresh air in the garden? I think we both need to get away from this unpleasant atmosphere." I took his hand without a second thought. It was warm, firm, secure. He helped me up from the chair gently. As we walked between the tables toward the exit of the ballroom, I felt all eyes on us. But for the first time, they were not looks of pity. They were looks of astonishment, respect, admiration. Even this powerful man, this important businessman whom Sebastian had been pursuing for years, had chosen to be on my side, had chosen to defend me, had chosen to honor me when my own family had humiliated me. We passed by the main table. Caroline was still sitting there, completely paralyzed. Our eyes met for a second. I saw tears in her eyes. I saw regret. I saw fear. I saw my little girl buried under layers and layers of ambition and superficiality. But I no longer felt sorry for her. I felt sorry for myself, for all the years I wasted raising someone who would end up being ashamed of me. I looked away and kept walking. We went out to the garden where the night air hit my face with a welcome coolness. I could finally breathe. Alistair guided me to a stone bench surrounded by flowers. We sat in silence for a few moments. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to thank him for what he had just done for me. Finally, in a broken voice, I whispered, "Why did you do that? You don't even know me." He smiled sadly and replied, "Because that's exactly what it feels like to be belittled by the people you love." He looked me directly in the eyes and continued, 20 years ago, I lost my mother. She was a humble, hardworking woman who broke her back to give me an education. When I finally succeeded in business, I wanted to give her everything she never had, but she died before I could do it, before I could tell her enough how much I appreciated her sacrifices. Since then, I promised I would never, ever allow anyone to mistreat a hardworking mother in front of me. And when I saw what they were doing to you in there, I couldn't stay silent. The tears finally rolled down my cheeks. All the emotions held back for weeks exploded at once. I cried with deep sobs that shook my entire body. Alistair said nothing. He just put his hand on my shoulder in a gesture of silent comfort. After several minutes, I managed to control myself. I wiped my tears with the handkerchief he offered me from his pocket. In a hoarse voice, I asked him, "Were you really going to invest in Sebastian's company?" He nodded. "Yes, it was a $50 million project. We had been negotiating for months, but it's not worth it. Money can be earned in 1,000 ways. Dignity and values are priceless. I couldn't believe this man had sacrificed a $50 million deal just to defend me. A stranger, a woman he had just met. I was overwhelmed with gratitude and emotion. I told him with absolute sincerity, I don't know how to thank you for what you did. You completely changed this night for me. You made me feel valuable when everyone else had made me feel invisible. He smiled warmly. You don't have to keep thanking me. Just promise me that you'll never again allow anyone to treat you as they treated you today. You are worth more than all that family's money put together. We stayed in the garden talking for almost an hour. He told me about his life, his businesses, his deceased mother. I told him about Caroline, about the years of sacrifice, about how I had reached this breaking point. It was the most honest and healing conversation I had had in years. For the first time, I felt like someone was truly listening to me, that someone truly saw me, not as the poor mother, not as the humble woman, but as Rose, as a human being with dignity and self-worth. Finally, we decided to return to the ballroom. When we entered, the party continued, but the atmosphere had completely changed. People looked at us with obvious respect. Some guests approached to greet Alistair and took the opportunity to say kind words to me. An elderly lady told me, how lucky you are to have such a loyal friend as Mr. Alistair. You are a very special woman. I just nodded with a shy smile. I didn't correct her assumption. I didn't explain that I had just met him that night. I let them think whatever they wanted. Sebastian and Vanessa watched us from afar with defeated expressions. They didn't approach us anymore. They didn't try anything else. They knew they had lost, that their cruelty had cost them much more than they ever imagined. Caroline had disappeared. Someone told me she had locked herself in the restroom, crying. Part of me wanted to go and console her, but another part, the part that was finally learning to value itself, knew that she needed to face the consequences of her actions. The party continued. Vanessa tried to regain control of the situation by throwing the bridal bouquet. She called all the single women to the center of the dance floor. Caroline finally appeared with swollen eyes and ruined makeup. She had clearly been crying for a long time. She looked at me from afar with an expression I couldn't decipher. Was it regret? Was it shame? Or simply anger at having been exposed in front of everyone? I didn't approach. I stayed seated next to Alistair, observing the scene like an external spectator. Caroline threw the bouquet without enthusiasm. A cousin of Sebastian's caught it, and all the women applauded with feigned excitement. Then came the moment for the bride and her father to dance, except Caroline didn't have a father. Her father abandoned us when she was 3 years old. He never came back, never called, never sent a cent to help us. I was both mother and father for 15 years until I finally stopped waiting for his return. Throughout those years, when Caroline asked why she didn't have a dad, I would gently explain that her dad had left, but that I loved her twice as much to make up for it. I promised her she would never be alone because she had me, and she would hug me and say I was enough, that she didn't need anyone else. But now, seeing Thomas lead her to the center of the dance floor for that traditional dance, I understood that I had never been enough for her. She had always wanted more. She had always wanted the life I couldn't give her. And when she finally found it with Sebastian, she didn't hesitate to leave me behind. The music began. It was a cheesy song about fathers and daughters. Thomas danced with Caroline while Vanessa proudly photographed them from the side. All the guests watched emotionally, some were crying. I only felt an immense emptiness in my chest. Alistair noticed my expression and whispered, "That should be your moment." I just shook my head, unable to speak. I had a lump in my throat so big it prevented me from breathing. When the song ended, everyone applauded. Caroline hugged Thomas affectionately and kissed him on the forehead like a loving father, and I remained invisible in my corner. I was still the mother who didn't deserve that dance, the mother who had been replaced by a richer, more socially acceptable version. Finally, it was time for the toasts. Vanessa took the microphone first. She spoke for 10 minutes about how wonderful Caroline was, how happy she was to welcome her into her family, about the brilliant future awaiting her with Sebastian. She didn't mention my name once. She didn't acknowledge my years of sacrifice. She didn't thank me for anything I had done. She ended her speech with a phrase that pierced me like a spear. "Caroline, today you not only gain a husband, you gain a mother who will guide and support you in everything. Welcome to our family, Bis daughter." She called her daughter, as if I didn't exist, as if the 18 years we spent together were irrelevant. The guests applauded her speech. Some people cried emotionally. Sebastian took the microphone next and spoke about love, about family, about values. The irony was so great it almost made me laugh. What did he know about values? What did he know about family? He was a man who had humiliated his mother-in-law at his own wedding. His words were hollow, empty, lying, but everyone nodded as if they were the most profound words in the world. When his speech ended, there was an awkward silence. Normally at weddings, the mother of the bride also says a few words. Everyone expected someone to hand me the microphone, but no one did. Sebastian simply said, "All right, let's continue with the party," and handed the microphone to the DJ. It was going to end like this. I was going to be completely erased from the important moments of my own daughter's wedding. But then Alistair stood up, walked determinedly to where the DJ was, and asked for the microphone. The DJ looked at him confused, but handed it over without question. Alistair walked back to the center of the ballroom as all eyes fell on him. He cleared his throat and spoke with that powerful voice that commanded immediate attention. "Good evening, everyone. I know it wasn't in the original program, but I would like to say a few words if you'll allow me." He looked directly at Sebastian with an expression that admitted no refusal. My son-in-law could only nod weakly. Alistair continued, "I don't know the newlyweds personally, but I know someone very special at this wedding, someone who deserves to be recognized and honored, someone who has been inexplicably ignored throughout this entire celebration." The ballroom fell into absolute silence. You could even hear the sound of glasses being placed on tables. Alistair walked over to where I was sitting and extended his hand, inviting me to stand up. My heart was beating so fast I thought I would have a heart attack. With trembling legs, I stood up. He gently guided me toward the center of the ballroom, right in front of the main table where Caroline, Sebastian, and Vanessa watched us with horrified expressions. Alistair spoke again, addressing all the guests. "This is Rose, Caroline's mother, a woman who worked cleaning houses for 20 years to give her daughter everything she needed. A woman who sacrificed her youth, her dreams, her opportunities, everything, absolutely everything, so her daughter could have an education and a better future. A woman who raised a child alone after being abandoned by her husband. A woman who deserves all our respect and admiration." He paused, letting his words sink into every person present. Then he continued in a firmer voice, "And yet, tonight, this extraordinary woman was seated at the last table in the ballroom. She was excluded from the family photographs. She was ignored in the speeches. She was treated as if she were a filler guest instead of the reason this wedding exists. Because without Rose, Caroline would not be here. Without her sacrifices, there would be no bride to celebrate. And I find it profoundly unfair, profoundly sad, that a mother like this is treated with such contempt on her daughter's most important day." The silence was so dense it could be cut with a knife. Some people began to nod their heads. Others looked toward Caroline and Sebastian with expressions of disapproval. Vanessa was red with contained rage, but couldn't say anything. Anything she said now would only worsen the situation. Alistair was not finished. He took my hand and said, "Rose, I want everyone here to know that you are a woman of incalculable value, that your sacrifices were not in vain, even if they haven't been acknowledged tonight, that your dignity remains intact, no matter how they have treated you, and that anyone with any sense can see that this wedding is only possible because of you." Tears ran freely down my face. I didn't try to stop them. Alistair raised his glass and said in a resonant voice, "I propose a toast to Rose. To all the working mothers who break their backs for their children, to all the women who give everything without expecting anything in return, to the true heroine of this story, even though some have tried to forget her." He raised his glass to me, and then something incredible happened. One by one, the people in the ballroom began to stand up. They raised their glasses, and with voices that united into a chorus, they said, "To Rose." More than 200 people were standing, toasting me. Me! The woman who had spent the entire night being invisible, the mother who had been relegated to the last corner. Suddenly, I was the center of attention in a way I never imagined possible. I looked around the ballroom with my eyes blurred by tears and saw smiling faces, expressions of support, gestures of approval. Some elderly women looked at me with deep understanding, as if they too had gone through something similar. Some men nodded respectfully, and in the middle of that sea of supportive people, my eyes found Caroline. She was standing next to the main table, pale as a ghost, with tears running down her cheeks, completely ruining her bridal makeup. Her hands trembled, holding a glass that seemed to weigh tons. She looked at me with a devastated expression, as if finally, after months of blindness, she could see what she had done to me. Next to her, Sebastian had a tight jaw and a face red with humiliation. Vanessa was sitting with a rigid back, feigning composure, but her eyes betrayed the storm of rage and powerlessness she felt inside. They had lost control of their own wedding, and everyone present had witnessed their cruelty. Alistair lowered his glass and looked at me with those warm eyes that had rescued me that night. He whispered in my ear, "Now everyone knows who you really are. No one can take that away from you." I nodded, unable to speak. My throat was tight with emotion. He accompanied me back to our table while the guests continued to stand and applaud. It was the longest and shortest walk of my life. Every step resonated with recovered dignity. Every look I received returned a piece of the soul I had lost during all those months of humiliation. When we sat down, people finally returned to their places, but the atmosphere had completely changed. No one laughed with the same joy as before. No one looked at Vanessa with admiration anymore. No one treated Caroline like an adorable princess anymore. The veneer of perfection had cracked, revealing the ugliness underneath. And although a part of me felt bad for ruining my daughter's wedding, a larger part felt that justice had finally been served. The DJ tried to revive the party spirit by playing upbeat music. Some people went out to dance, but the energy was no longer the same. Every so often, someone would approach my table to greet me personally. A woman in her 70s took my hand and said in a trembling voice, "Thank you for being here, dear. You reminded me of my own mother." She was also forgotten by her children when they married into money. She died without them understanding how valuable she was. I hope your daughter understands before it's too late. Her words pierced my heart because I knew she was right. Caroline still had time to rectify things, but would she? A man in his 40s also approached. He turned out to be a distant cousin of Sebastian's. He told me in a low voice so no one else would hear, "I always knew Vanessa was a viper, but I never thought Sebastian would be the same. What they did to you today is unforgivable. I want you to know that not everyone in this family is like that. Some of us still have values." I thanked him for his words with a tired smile. It was comforting to know that not everyone approved of what had happened. Caroline tried to approach me at one point. I saw her stand up from her table and walk timidly in my direction, but Vanessa stopped her. Grabbing her arm tightly, she whispered something in her ear that I couldn't hear. Caroline looked back at me with an anguished expression, then she lowered her head and returned to her seat. Vanessa shot me a look of pure hatred. That woman wasn't going to let go of my daughter easily. She had invested too much in turning her into her personal project, her trophy, her substitute daughter, who met all the superficial standards she valued. Alistair noticed the exchange and commented, "That woman is toxic, and your daughter is caught in her grip. She's going to need a lot of strength to break free." I knew he was right, but I also knew that strength would have to come from Caroline herself. I could no longer save her, no longer protect her, no longer be her shield against the world. She had chosen her path, and now she would have to walk it and face the consequences. The party began to die down. It was almost 2 a.m., and people were starting to say goodbye. A guest passed by the main table to give the newlyweds final congratulations before leaving. I noticed that many did so with less enthusiasm than at the beginning. Some practically went through the motions without real emotion. The magic of the perfect wedding had been broken, and everyone knew why. Alistair asked me if I wanted to leave. I said yes. I no longer had any reason to stay. There wasn't going to be a farewell hug with Caroline. There weren't going to be words of love between mother and daughter. That night had marked a before and after in our relationship, and though it hurt to admit it, I knew things would never go back to the way they were. Maybe that was okay. Maybe I needed to learn to live without centering my entire existence on a daughter who no longer needed me. Or worse, who was ashamed of me. We stood up to leave. Alistair offered me his arm like a gentleman from another era. I took it gratefully. We walked toward the exit of the ballroom, feeling some eyes on us. Before reaching the door, I heard a broken voice shout, "Mom, wait!" I stopped. My heart skipped a beat. It was Caroline. She was running toward me with her wedding dress lifted to avoid tripping. Her face was a mask of devastation. Tears had completely ruined her makeup, leaving black smudges under her eyes. She looked destroyed. She looked like my little girl again. She reached me, panting, opened her mouth to speak, but no sound came out, only sobs. She covered her face with her hands and cried with a desperation that broke my heart. Part of me wanted to hug her, wanted to comfort her, as I had done 1,000 times when she was little, and I wanted to tell her that everything would be okay. But another part of me, the part that had been trampled and humiliated all night, stood firm. I didn't move. I didn't extend my arms. I just waited for her to be able to speak. Finally, between broken sobs, Caroline managed to say, "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. I don't know what I turned into. I love you. I've always loved you, but I got carried away by all this." She gestured, encompassing the luxurious ballroom, her expensive dress, the life of appearances she had chosen. "I let myself be convinced that your love wasn't enough, that I needed more, and I hurt you. I hurt you so much. Forgive me, please. Please, Mom, forgive me." Her words were sincere, I could feel it, but sincerity didn't erase the pain. It didn't erase the weeks of humiliation. It didn't erase the fact that she had relegated me to the last table at her wedding. It didn't erase that she had allowed Vanessa to treat me like garbage. It didn't erase that she had chosen that family over me again and again. I took a deep breath before answering. My voice came out firmer than I expected. "Caroline, I appreciate your apologies, but I need you to understand something. The damage you did to me isn't erased with words. You made me feel worthless, that all the years I spent raising you, sacrificing for you, meant nothing. You erased me from the most important moments of your wedding, as if I never existed." She sobbed louder. "I know, Ma, I know, and I have no excuse. I was awful. I was the worst daughter in the world. But I swear I'm going to change. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to—" I interrupted her gently but firmly. "No, Caroline, you're not going to fix anything tonight. You're going back to your husband. You're going to finish your wedding. And later, when time passes, when you've truly reflected on who you want to be, then maybe we can talk. But right now, I need space. I need to heal. I need to learn to live without being emotionally dependent on a daughter who clearly no longer needs me." Her eyes widened in horror. "Are you abandoning me? Are you leaving me?" The question hurt me because it showed how little she understood the situation. I replied with cynicism, "No, my love, you abandoned me first. Today I'm just choosing my dignity. I'm choosing to value myself, something I should have done a long time ago." I leaned in and kissed her on the forehead as I did when she was little. "I love you, Caroline. I will always love you. But I can no longer allow you to treat me like this. I hope you understand that someday." I turned around and kept walking toward the exit with Alistair by my side. Behind me, I heard my daughter's heartbreak and sobs. Every step I took cost me superhuman effort. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to go back, to hug her, to forget everything. But I kept going because, for the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. And although it hurt like nothing had ever hurt before, I knew it was the right thing to do. We left the ballroom for the parking lot. The cold night air hit my face, and for the first time in hours, I could breathe deeply. My legs were shaking. My whole body was trembling. The adrenaline that had kept me standing during the last exchange with Caroline began to wear off, leaving me exhausted. Alistair held my arm firmly when he noticed me wavering. "Relax, it's over. You did incredible," he said in a comforting voice. But I didn't feel incredible. I felt broken. I felt as if I had just closed a chapter of my life that I could never open again in the same way. We reached his car. It was an elegant black vehicle, the kind I had only seen in movies. He opened the door for me gentlemanly and waited for me to sit down before closing it. He quietly walked around the car and got into the driver's seat. For a moment, neither of us said anything. We just sat in the silence of the car while the lights of the event ballroom shone in the distance. Finally, he asked, "Where can I take you?" I gave him my address. I lived in a small apartment in a modest neighborhood across town. The drive would take about 40 minutes. As he drove through the empty streets in the early morning, I looked out the window without really seeing anything. My mind kept replaying the scenes of the night. The initial humiliation, Alistair's arrival, his devastating speech, the toast from all the guests, Caroline's crying. Each moment had been so intense that I found it hard to believe it all happened in a single night. I felt like I had lived an entire year in a matter of hours. Alistair broke the silence. "I know it hurts now, but you did the right thing by walking away. Sometimes true love means letting people face the consequences of their actions." He was right, but knowing he was right didn't make it hurt any less. I asked him something that had been gnawing at my mind since he appeared at my table. "How did you know everything about me? How did you know I work cleaning houses? How did you know about the sacrifices I made?" He smiled slightly without taking his eyes off the road. "Sebastian, during one of our business meetings a few months ago, we were at a restaurant, and he received a call from Caroline. She was upset because you had tried to give your opinion about the wedding. After hanging up, Sebastian made derogatory comments about you. He said you were a simple woman who didn't understand the social level Caroline now belonged to, that you had been a cleaner all your life and had no education or class." I felt a stab in my chest. Sebastian talked about me like that, and probably Caroline did too. Alistair continued, "At that moment, I almost canceled all negotiations with him. I found the way he spoke about his future wife's mother repulsive, but I decided to give him a chance. I thought maybe it was just an isolated comment, a bad day. We all have moments when we say things we shouldn't. But when I arrived at the wedding today as a surprise guest and saw how they had seated you in the back, I knew it hadn't been an isolated comment. It was a pattern. It was his true nature, and I couldn't stay silent." I thanked him again for what he had done. He brushed it off with a wave of his hand. "You don't have to keep thanking me. I did what any decent person would have done." But we both knew that wasn't true. There were over 200 people in that ballroom, and none of them had said anything until Alistair spoke up. Everyone had been silent witnesses to my humiliation, passive accomplices to my pain. Only he had the courage to intervene. We arrived at my neighborhood. The streets were dark and quiet. The buildings were old. The sidewalks cracked. The streetlights dim. It was a world completely different from the luxury of the event ballroom. Alistair parked in front of my building. He looked around without judgment, just observing. I told him with embarrassment, "It's not much, but it's my home." He looked at me seriously. "Your home is worth more than all the mansions in the world because you built it with honest work and dignity. Never be ashamed of that." His words moved me deeply. I got out of the car and he got out too. He insisted on walking me to my apartment door, even though I told him it wasn't necessary. We climbed the stairs to the third floor. My apartment was the last one down the hall. I took out my keys with trembling hands. Before opening the door, I turned to him. "Alistair, I don't know how I'm going to repay you for everything you did for me tonight." He shook his head firmly. "There's nothing to repay. But if you really want to do something for me, promise me that you'll take care of yourself, that you'll value yourself, that you'll never again allow anyone to treat you as they treated you today. Promise me." I looked him in the eyes and replied firmly, "I promise you." We said goodbye with a warm hug. He gave me a business card and said, "If you ever need anything, anything at all, call me. No matter the time, no matter the reason, I'll be there." I nodded, putting the card in my purse as if it were a treasure. I watched him go down the stairs and disappear. I entered my apartment and closed the door. Suddenly, the silence was overwhelming. I took off my shoes that had been killing me all night. I took off the champagne-colored dress I had bought with so much effort. I removed my makeup in front of the bathroom mirror and saw my tired face, my swollen eyes, my exhausted expression. I looked old. I felt old. I put on my most comfortable pajamas and sat on the living room sofa. My apartment was small but cozy, filled with photographs of Caroline at different stages of her life. Baby Caroline, little girl Caroline, teenage Caroline, Caroline graduating from college. Each photo was a reminder of the years we had spent together, of the life we had built, just the two of us against the world. But that Caroline no longer existed. The woman she had become was someone I didn't recognize, someone who had chosen money and status over love and loyalty. My phone started vibrating. It was Caroline. She called again and again. I let it go to voicemail. I didn't have the strength to talk to her. Not that night, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, or maybe never. I needed time to process everything, to heal, to rebuild myself. Text messages started coming in one after another. Mom, please answer. I need to talk to you. I can't sleep knowing you're angry. Please, Mom, I beg you. I read each message, feeling a mixture of pain and rage. Now she wanted to talk. Now she needed me. But when I needed her during all those months of preparations, she wasn't there. I turned off my phone. I needed silence. I needed peace. I lay down in my bed and looked at the ceiling in the darkness. Tears began to flow silently. I cried for the daughter I had lost. I cried for the years of sacrifice that seemed to have been worthless. I cried for my loneliness. I cried for my pain, but I also cried with relief because, for the first time in my life, I had defended my dignity, I had set boundaries, I had said no more. And although it hurt terribly, I knew it was the beginning of something new, the beginning of a version of myself that valued herself, that respected herself, that did not depend on anyone else's approval. The following days were the hardest of my life. Caroline called constantly, left crying voicemails, begging for forgiveness, promising to change. Vanessa also tried to contact me. Her messages were very different, threatening. She told me I was overreacting, that I was being dramatic, that I was ruining her son's happiness with my victimhood. I deleted every one of her messages without responding. Sebastian sent a formal email apologizing for any misunderstanding during the wedding. His apology was empty, calculated, probably written by a lawyer. I also ignored it. Alistair called me several days later to see how I was. I told him about Caroline's insistent calls. He advised me to take the time I needed before responding, not to rush to forgive just because I felt guilty. That true forgiveness required real change from the other person, not just pretty words. His advice helped me stay firm in my decision to maintain distance. He invited me out for coffee the following week. I accepted. It was strange to have a new friend at 68, but it was a type of friendship I needed, one based on mutual respect, not family obligation. A full year passed since that devastating wedding, a year in which my life changed in ways I never imagined possible. The first few months were the hardest. Waking up every morning with the weight of Caroline's absence was like carrying stones in my chest. But slowly, day by day, I began to rebuild myself. I began to discover who Rose was without the title of mother, without the identity that had defined my entire existence. And what I discovered surprised me. I discovered that I was stronger than I thought, more valuable than they had made me feel, more complete than I ever imagined. Alistair became a true friend. We saw each other regularly for coffee, to walk in the park, to simply converse. He introduced me to his circle of friends, successful, educated, resourceful people. At first, I felt out of place. What did I have in common with businessmen, lawyers, doctors? But they treated me with a genuine respect that had nothing to do with my bank account or my educational level. They valued me for who I was, for my history, for my strength, for my humanity. It was liberating to feel seen in that way. I started doing things I had put off for years. I signed up for painting classes at a community center. I discovered I had a talent for art. My hands that had cleaned so many houses were now creating beauty on canvases. I also joined a college book club. I read books that opened my mind to new ideas, new perspectives. I made friends my age who understood my struggles because they had lived their own. For the first time in decades, I felt part of something that didn't revolve around Caroline. Carolyn kept trying to contact me for the first 6 months. Her messages evolved over time. At first, they were desperate and pleading, full of empty promises. Then they became resentful. She blamed me for not forgiving her. She accused me of being cruel, of abandoning her when she needed me most. She said I was the bad mother for not accepting her apologies. Those messages hurt me deeply, but Alistair constantly reminded me that emotional manipulation is also a form of abuse, that I had no obligation to submit to it. After 6 months, the messages stopped. There was an absolute silence that lasted weeks. I thought maybe she had decided to move on without me, that she had finally accepted that her behavior had permanent consequences. But then, one rainy October afternoon, there was a knock at my door. I opened it without looking through the peephole, thinking it was the delivery person with the package I was expecting. But it wasn't the delivery person, it was Caroline. She looked different, thinner, paler. She had deep dark circles that makeup couldn't hide. Her clothes were elegant but messy, as if she had put them on without paying attention. Her eyes, which used to shine with ambition and confidence, now looked dull, defeated. We stared at each other in silence for several seconds. Finally, she whispered in a broken voice, "Hello, Mom." I didn't answer immediately, I just observed her. This woman at my door was my daughter, but she was also a stranger, someone who had hurt me immensely, someone I no longer trusted. I asked her what she was doing there. She swallowed hard. "I need to talk to you, please, just 5 minutes." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to close the door in her face. Another part, that maternal part that never completely dies, wanted to hug her and tell her everything would be okay. But I stood firm on my boundary. I told her she could come in, but that she had to respect my space, that I would listen to what she had to say. But I promised nothing. She nodded with desperate gratitude and entered. We sat in the living room, the same sofa where I had cried so many nights after the wedding. Caroline looked around the apartment as if seeing it for the first time. All the years she lived here seemed to have been erased from her memory. Finally, she began to speak. "My marriage is destroyed, Mom. Sebastian and I barely speak. We argue constantly. He blames me for ruining his relationship with Alistair and for losing the investment. He says we lost 50 million because of me. Vanessa treats me like a failure, as if I ruined her family's reputation. I'm no longer the perfect daughter-in-law. Now I'm the shame they have to hide." I listened without interrupting. She continued with tears running down her cheeks. "But the worst part isn't that. The worst part is that every day I wake up and remember what I did to you. I remember how I treated you. I remember the look on your face when you saw me sitting at the main table while you were in the back. And I hate myself. I hate myself so much, Mom. I don't know how I could have been so cruel. I don't know what I turned into. I sold my soul for a lifestyle, and now that lifestyle has fallen apart, and I'm left with nothing, without you, without my dignity, without myself." Her words were sincere, I could feel it, but sincerity alone doesn't fix the damage. I told her calmly, "Caroline, I appreciate you coming to tell me this. I appreciate that you can finally see what you did. But I need you to understand something very important. Forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to the way they were, and I'm no longer the same woman I was a year ago. That year changed me. It taught me to value myself. It taught me that I don't have to accept crumbs of love from anyone, not even my own daughter." She sobbed harder. "Does that mean you'll never forgive me? That I've lost you forever?" I took a deep breath before answering. "It means forgiveness will take time and will require more than words. It will require consistent actions. It will require you to demonstrate with deeds, not promises, that you have truly changed. And in the meantime, I'm going to continue building my life. A life that no longer revolves around you. A life in which I am the protagonist, not just your mother." She nodded with her head down, accepting my terms. I asked her about her situation. She told me Sebastian had lost several clients after the wedding. The story of how he treated his mother-in-law had spread in their social circles. It turned out that many of their business contacts valued family and didn't want to associate with someone so cruel. Vanessa was furious because her reputation had also suffered. People whispered about her at social events. Some confronted her directly, asking how she could have allowed the mother of the bride to be treated that way. Her kingdom of perfect appearances was crumbling. Caroline told me she was considering getting a divorce, that she no longer loved Sebastian, that maybe she never truly loved him, that she only loved the idea of the life he represented, financial security, social status, material things. But now all that seemed empty, hollow, meaningless to her. I told her that was a decision only she could make, that I wasn't going to advise her on what to do with her marriage, that she needed to learn to make her own decisions and live with the consequences. She understood. We talked for 2 hours. It was the most honest conversation we had had in years, perhaps in our entire lives. For the first time, she saw me as a complete person, not just as her mother. And I saw her as an imperfect human being trying to navigate her own mistakes. When she left, she didn't promise me that everything would be fixed. She didn't beg me to return to her life immediately. She just thanked me for listening and asked permission to visit me again in a few weeks. I told her she could, but it would have to be on my terms, on my time, with my boundaries. She accepted. Now, as I write this story a year after that terrible wedding, I can say that I am at peace. Caroline and I are slowly, very slowly, rebuilding our relationship. She no longer lives with Sebastian. She moved to a small apartment similar to mine. She got a modest job. She is learning to live without the luxuries she once thought indispensable. We see each other once a month for coffee. The conversations are still sometimes uncomfortable. There are wounds that haven't completely healed yet, but there is progress, there is genuine effort on her part, and that is enough for now. Alistair remains my friend. He helped me get a better job in an office where I no longer have to clean houses. He says my years of customer service experience make me perfect for the position. I earn more money, I have benefits, I have dignity in my work. For the first time in my life, I feel valued professionally. He also introduced me to a widower his age, a kind man named Ian, who invites me out to dinner from time to time. I don't know if it will turn into anything more, but I enjoy his company. I enjoy feeling desired and appreciated at. The biggest lesson I learned from all of this is simple but powerful. It is never too late to choose yourself. It is never too late to demand the respect you deserve. And the best revenge is not destroying those who hurt you. The best revenge is building a life so full, so dignified, so beautiful that their opinion of you ceases to matter. I didn't need Caroline to validate me. I didn't need Vanessa to approve of me. I didn't need Sebastian to respect me. I only needed to respect myself. And when I finally did, everything changed. So to all the women reading this, to all the mothers who have been belittled, ignored, erased by their own children, don't give up. Your worth does not depend on how well others treat you. Your worth is inherent, it is permanent, it is unbreakable, and never ever allow anyone to make you believe otherwise. Because you are worth more than all the gold in the world and deserve to be treated like the queens you are.